Mercedes has always been associated with large, expensive, and prestigious cars. The company built limousines for presidents, the legendary Gullwing supercar, and had no real interest in stepping into the people's car segment. But by the late 1970s, things had changed. Oil crises, tightening emissions standards, and a growing wave of young buyers pushed Mercedes towards something that had once seemed almost unthinkable: developing a compact, more affordable sedan. That car became the Mercedes 190, quickly nicknamed the Baby Benz. Some saw it as a natural heir to the brand's proud lineage. Others viewed it as an illegitimate child, created under pressure rather than by choice. So today, we're going to dig in and find out: did the 190 truly earn its place as a real Mercedes, or was it the most risky compromise in the company's history?
Mercedes-Benz introduces the finest compact car.
The 1973 fuel crisis hit the American automotive market especially hard. A country that had spent decades living on an endless supply of cheap gasoline suddenly faced long lines at gas stations and strict limitations. Owners of huge sedans like the Chevrolet Impala or Ford LTD were forced to decide: keep feeding their thirsty V8s or switch to smaller, more economical cars. Most of the middle class chose the latter without much hesitation, moving to Japanese models: light, simple, and fuel efficient. But customers with higher incomes, doctors, lawyers, engineers, were in no rush to follow. They were used to driving European premium brands like Mercedes and BMW, and they had no intention of trading them for Japanese cars, which, despite being economical, lacked prestige entirely. However, this created a problem within Mercedes itself. To keep such clients, the company needed a smaller model, one that still carried the brand's trademark refinement and status. But Mercedes simply didn't have one at the time. In Munich and Stuttgart, everyone understood that the automotive world was changing, but they chose very different strategies. Mercedes focused on diesel versions of its existing models, and even equipped the E-Class and S-Class with them. In Europe, this seemed like a sensible solution: lower fuel consumption, incredible longevity. But in the United States, diesel passenger cars were met with little enthusiasm. Slow, noisy, and that characteristic diesel clatter certainly didn't add any prestige. BMW took a different approach. In 1975, they introduced a new compact sports sedan, which would become known as the 3 Series. This car turned out to be exactly what the market wanted: compact, dynamic, economical, yet still premium. By the late 1970s, BMW already had a complete and clearly defined model lineup: the 3 Series, 5 Series, and 7 Series. Mercedes, meanwhile, only offered the E-Class and S-Class. Excellent cars, but they simply had nothing to counter the new 3 Series. At first glance, it might seem that once BMW launched the 3 Series, Stuttgart immediately rushed to develop a response. But the reality was different. Work on Mercedes' own compact sedan had actually begun a year before the 3 Series debuted, back in 1974. That was when the project for what would eventually become the Mercedes-Benz 190 first started. For many, this is surprising because the 190 didn't reach production until 9 years later, in 1983, an unusually long development cycle, even by Mercedes standard. In Stuttgart, there was no intention to build a local equivalent of mass-market models like the Volkswagen Passat, the Opel Rekord, or worse, the Golf or Kadett. The head of advanced development, Hans Scherenberg, saw the task very differently. They needed to create not just a small sedan, but a true Mercedes, compact, yet matching the brand's larger models in ride comfort, noise isolation, and driving dynamics. The bar was set extremely high, and the budget reflected it. Development of the Baby Benz ultimately cost around $1 billion, an astronomical sum for the time. But the years of work and the money spent were not in vain. Even though the future 190 was styled by the same legendary designer, Bruno Sacco, the early prototypes looked surprisingly unlike a traditional Mercedes. Stripped of their signature elements, the large chrome grille and the characteristic horizontal body lines, the test cars resembled generic sedans of the era, somewhere between a Ford and a plain Japanese model of the late 1970s. Automotive journalists suspected that Mercedes was developing an answer to BMW, but up until the early 1980s, almost no concrete information about the project appeared. And while the first BMW 3 Series was offered only as a two-door sedan, not a coupe as some assume, the future 190 remained unmistakably a Mercedes, a proper four-door sedan, just like the flagship W116. The new model premiered on December 8, 1982, and just a few days later, the 190 arrived at dealerships. The first thing that surprised buyers and the press was its designation. The new Mercedes broke the usual internal naming logic. The flagship S-Class carried the index W116, the E-Class W123, while the compact newcomer suddenly received the name 190 without any letter suffixes. What's more, the number 190 had no relation to the engine's displacement, even though this was the standard convention at the time for both Mercedes and BMW. Most likely, Stuttgart simply didn't want to use the 200 designation to avoid direct competition with the 200 model within the E-Class family. And the 180 index may have seemed too modest. The base versions of the 190 were modestly equipped, but the design did all the work. Clean proportions and precise lines made it instantly recognizable as a true Mercedes. It was on this model that Bruno Sacco finalized the brand's signature styling, later seen on the W126 and W124. Technically, the 190 was quite traditional: rear-wheel drive and a longitudinal engine layout. The key innovation was its multi-link rear suspension, a rare solution for the compact class. Gasoline versions started with simple four-cylinder engines of around 100 horsepower, which was sufficient for a compact sedan. Practical buyers, especially taxi drivers, often preferred the diesel variants, first a 2-liter unit, later a more torquey 5-cylinder, known for its efficiency and respectable performance. Against the BMW 3 Series, the new baby Benz looked modern and upscale. However, while Mercedes spent 9 years perfecting the project, BMW had already released the second generation of the 3 Series and expanded it into a full family. BMW now offered 2- and 4-door sedans, a station wagon, and even a convertible. Mercedes, meanwhile, offered only a 4-door sedan. A convertible based on the 190 was studied, and the prototype looked promising, but it never made it to production. There was also an attempt to create a compact hatchback using the same platform, but the design turned out so unsuccessful that the idea was quickly abandoned. In 1983, Mercedes introduced the high-performance 190e 2.316, developed with Cosworth. It turned the compact sedan into a genuinely quick machine and paved the way for the future DTM-focused Evolution models. Despite initial concerns that the baby Benz might not catch on, sales were impressive. In the first year alone, nearly 110,000 units were built. In 1984, production almost doubled, and by 1985, more than 210,000 cars had been produced. The 190 quickly became the best-selling Mercedes and one of the most popular cars in Germany, ranking just behind Volkswagen and Opel. In other words, the original goal was achieved. The compact Mercedes found its place on the market, and not only overseas. The first major update to the 190 came in 1988. Plastic cladding was added around the body, and the interior received minor revisions. The lineup expanded with new versions: a more powerful 122 horsepower turbo diesel, the Sportline model, featuring a lower suspension and sharper handling. Later, stronger gasoline options also appeared, including a 2.6-liter inline-6 with 160 horsepower. At the other end of the range, a more affordable 190e 1.8 variant was introduced. In the late 1980s, Mercedes decided to enter the German Touring Championship, DTM, where the BMW M3 was already competing successfully. For homologation, A special series was produced in 1989, the 190 E2.516 Evolution 1, with exactly 502 units built as required by the regulations. A year later came the next stage of development, Evolution 2, also limited to 502 units. It received significantly revised aerodynamic bodywork and a more powerful engine. It was in the 190E Evo 2 that AMG driver Klaus Ludwig won the 1992 DTM Championship, firmly securing the baby Benz's sporting reputation. Starting in 1991, ABS became standard on all 190s, and in 1992, central locking was also added to the basic equipment. Even so, many late production cars still came with manual window cranks, and climate control was often nothing more than a simple sunroof. The 190 remained an honest, straightforward car without unnecessary extras, focused not on gadgets, but on reliability and quality. By the early 1990s, time had caught up with it. BMW introduced a new generation of the 3 Series, and the baby Benz gradually began to lose its edge. Production ended in May 1993. By then, nearly 1.9 million units had been sold worldwide, an impressive number for a model in which not everyone believed at first. The 190 became Mercedes' first step into the compact segment and proved that the brand's character could live in a smaller form. It was solid, honest, and remarkably well-engineered, and certainly not a mistake. A true Mercedes, just in a more compact package.